The leaves were the color of old blood that autumn. A castle of black stone rose against the gray northern sky. Wolves on the battlements. A feast burning bright in every window. Inside the great hall, 300 guests laughing over spiced wine, unaware of the crossbows already aimed at their king's chest from the shadowed gallery above. A man in crimson velvet lifted a silver goblet. His smile was warm. His hand was steady. His eyes flicked once, just once, toward the rafters where killers waited for his signal. And then, behind a pillar at the edge of the hall, a thin, pale hand slipped a folded scrap of paper from a sleeve, charcoal letters, smeared in places, 3 short lines written by a girl who could barely write at all. The hand trembled. The girl stepped forward. She would have 1 heartbeat to choose. 1 heartbeat. And the wine pitcher in her grip was already beginning to fall. The leaves were the color of old blood that autumn. Wynne Hartley noticed it as she crossed the courtyard, her arms full of firewood, her breath visible in the cold morning air. The cobblestones beneath her thin leather shoes were slick with dew. Above her, the towers of Ravencrest Keep pierced the gray sky like the teeth of something hungry. She was 24 years old. She was human, and in a kingdom of wolves, that meant she was nothing. Wynne kept her head down. She always did. A maid who looked up was a maid who got noticed. And a maid who got noticed in this castle rarely lasted long. She had seen girls disappear, sent away, or worse. The wolves did not speak of it. But the humans whispered in the kitchens when the cooks were asleep. Her destination was a small stone cottage at the far edge of the servants' quarter. The wooden door hung slightly crooked. The chimney leaked smoke through a crack in the mortar. But inside, on a narrow bed beneath 3 thin blankets, lay the only person in the world who mattered to her, Grandmother Mabel. 70 years old, or close to it. Mabel's herself was no longer sure. Wynne pushed the door open with her hip. The single room smelled of wood smoke and dried lavender and the faint, sour scent of sickness. A fire was dying in the small hearth. Wynne knelt beside it, stacked the kindling, coaxed a flame back to life. "You're late, child." The voice was thin, but warm. Wynne smiled without turning around. The kitchens were chaos. The cooks are preparing for the equinox feast. The feast. Mabel's voice carried something Wynne could not name. Not bitterness, something older. Wynne crossed to the bed. She placed a hand on her grandmother's forehead. Warm, but not burning. "That was something. That was hope. I brought you bread. And there was broth left over from yesterday. Old Bram saved me a portion." "Bram is a good man. He is." Mabel's pale fingers found Wynne's wrist. Squeezed. Weak but insistent. "Listen to me, girl. I'm listening. Kindness needs no permission." Wynne closed her eyes. She had heard this her whole life. Since she was 4 years old, and her mother was lowered into the ground. Since she was 7, and her father did not come back from the road. Since she was 12 and Sister Bridget taught her to read by candlelight in the chapel cellar, because human girls were not supposed to know letters. Kindness needs no permission. "I know, grandmother. Say it back to me. Kindness needs no permission." "Good girl." Mabel's eyes closed. Her breathing evened out. Wynne sat on the edge of the bed and watched the rise and fall of the thin chest beneath the blanket. She watched until she was sure the breath would not stop. Then she stood, straightened her apron, and went back into the cold. The great hall of Ravencrest Keep was being transformed. Wynne entered through the servants' door and stopped for a moment to look. She could not help it. No matter how many times she saw it, it still struck her. The vaulted stone ceiling. The hanging tapestries depicting old wolf hunts. The long oak tables that could seat 300. The chandeliers being lowered on iron chains so the candle keepers could fit fresh tapers into each holder. For the autumnal equinox feast, the hall would shine like the inside of a sun. But Wynne was not here to admire. She was here to work. She slipped between 2 passing footmen and made her way toward the kitchens. The heat hit her before she reached the door. So did the noise. The shouting of the head cook. The clang of copper pots, the squeal of a knife being sharpened, the smell of roasting boar and bay leaf and something sweet on the stove. Hartley, she flinched. Marta, the head kitchen mistress, was a large woman with a face like a clenched fist. She pointed a wooden spoon at Win. Where have you been? My grandmother needed. I don't care if your grandmother is being eaten alive by crows. You're late. There are 17 platters of fruit that need arranging before the lords arrive. Move, Win moved. She worked. The way she had worked every day for the past 6 years. Quick hands, quiet feet, eyes down, mouth shut. The other kitchen girls chattered around her. But Win rarely joined in. She had learned early that silence was a kind of armor. It was while she was arranging the 7th platter that she dropped a plate. It happened in an instant. Her hand slipped. The porcelain hit the stone floor. Shattered. The kitchen went silent. Marta turned. Her face was already red. You stupid little. A voice cut through the kitchen. It's only a plate. Every head turned. Every back straightened. Every knee began to bend. Win looked up. He was standing in the doorway. King Alaric Ravencrest. She had seen him before. Of course she had. From a distance. Across rooms. At the high table during smaller feasts when she carried wine pitchers. But never this close. He was taller than she remembered. Broader. He wore a simple wool tunic the color of deep forest moss, with no crown, no jewels. His hair was dark. His eyes were gray. The kind of gray you saw in the sea before a storm. He was looking at her. Win could not breathe. The king stepped into the kitchen. The cooks froze. Marta's wooden spoon trembled in her hand. Alaric did not seem to notice any of them. He walked past the racks of hanging copper pots, past the chopping block, past the trembling apprentice boys. He stopped in front of Win. She dropped to her knees. The shattered plate cut into her palm. She did not flinch. Forget me, you guys. No, stand up. She did not move. I said. Stand up. She rose, slowly. She kept her eyes on the floor. Look at me. She could not. Look at me. She did. His eyes were not cold. That was the thing that surprised her most. They were tired. They were old in a way that had nothing to do with years. They were sad. What is your name? Win Hartley. Your Grace, Win. Are you hurt? She glanced down. Her palm was bleeding. It's nothing. Show me. She held out her hand. He took it. His skin was warm, warmer than any human she had ever touched. His fingers were rough with old calluses. He turned her palm over and examined the cut. Marta. Yes, Your Grace. This girl will see the castle healer. Then she may return to her duties, and I trust there will be no further incidents regarding a broken plate. No, Your Grace. Good. He released Win's hand. He did not smile. But something in his expression softened. Just for a moment. Just for her. Then he turned, and he was gone. The kitchen exhaled. Marta stared at Win. Her face was now a deeper shade of red, but she said nothing. She turned back to her station. She began chopping onions with violent precision. A girl beside Win, a fellow human maid named Pell, leaned in close. Her voice was a whisper. What in the name of the moon was that? Win could not answer. Because she did not know. Because the king of the northern territories had touched her hand. Because his eyes had been sad. Because he had spoken her name. Win Hartley. He had said her name. The wine cellars of Ravencrest Keep ran 4 stories deep beneath the castle. They were carved from the bedrock itself, lit by torches that burned low and blue from the damp. The air smelled of old oak and slow time. Spiderwebs hung in the corners like forgotten lace. Wine descended the stone steps, with a heavy iron ring of keys in one hand and an empty wicker basket in the other. Marta had sent her down for the special blackberry wine, the one reserved for the high table. It was a vintage from 20 years past. It rested in the deepest cellar. She did not mind the cellars. Down here, no one watched her. No one shouted. The silence was a comfort, not a threat. She reached the bottom step, walked along the long stone corridor. The torches were spaced far apart. Between them, the shadows pooled thick and black. She was halfway to the reserve cellar when she heard the voice. She froze. It came from somewhere to her left. The armory corridor. It branched off the main passage about 10 feet ahead. She stood very still. The voice was low, male, rasping. Not one she recognized. The silver is coated with wolfsbane. just as Lord Blackwood requested. Even an alpha won't survive a bolt to the chest. Wynne stopped breathing. She pressed herself against the cold stone wall. The keys in her hand were too loud. She closed her fist around them. Slowly, slowly, a second voice answered. And this one she knew. My men are stationed by the eastern solar and the gallery overlooking the Great Hall. Beta Tristan Croft. Her stomach turned to ice. Alaric will be dead before the third course is cleared. Once he falls in the chaos, I will step up. The pack will look to me for leadership. Blackwood gets the borderlands. I get the crown. Ensure the archers wait for my signal. I will raise my goblet to the king's health. A pause. A wet, ugly chuckle. And one more thing. The beta's voice dropped. Lower. Quieter. Anyone who sees us tonight. Anyone who could speak of this. Kill them. I don't care if they're servants. I don't care if they're children. No witnesses. Are we clear? Crystal? Footsteps began to move. Toward her. Wynne's heart was a wild thing trying to break out of her chest. She turned. She moved. Silently on the balls of her feet. The way Sister Bridget had once taught her. Long ago, when the village was raided, and they had to hide for 2 days in the chapel root cellar. She slipped a high of empty oak barrels. She held the basket against her chest. She held the keys in her closed fist. She held her breath. The footsteps grew louder. 2 shadows passed, long and distorted in the torchlight. One was Tristan. She could see the gold embroidery on the hem of his cloak. The other was a stranger, a man in a hooded gray traveler's coat. His face she did not see. They walked past her. They turned the corner. They were gone. Wynne did not move, not for a long time. She stood behind the barrels and shook. Her teeth chattered. She bit down on her own tongue to make them stop. She tasted copper. A maid. She was a maid. A human maid. Who would believe her? The beta was beloved. The beta had stood by the king's side through every battle, every winter, every funeral. The beta laughed easily and remembered the names of every man's wife and every man's son. If she opened her mouth and accused him, she would be dead before nightfall. She knew it the way she knew her own name. But there was the king. There was the man who had stopped Marta from striking her. There was the man with the tired eyes who had said her name. And there was her grandmother, lying in a thin cottage at the edge of the castle, eating bread from old Bram's mercy, living because Wynne worked here, living because the king had opened the royal granaries last winter when half the human servants would have starved. She thought of Mabel's voice. Kindness needs no permission. Wine forced herself to breathe. She still had a job to do. She walked the rest of the way to the reserve cellar. She unlocked the heavy oak door. She found the blackberry wine. She placed the bottles carefully in the wicker basket. She locked the cellar behind her. Then she went back up the stone steps and began to plan how to save a king's life without losing her own. Her quarters were not really quarters. They were a corner of the women servants' dormitory, a long stone room with 20 narrow beds along the walls. Each bed had a small wooden chest at its foot. The chests were the only privacy any of them had. Wynne knelt by hers now. The other beds were empty. Everyone was working. The feast began in less than 2 hours. She lifted the wooden lid. Inside, 2 folded shifts, a pair of woolen stockings, a small carved comb that had been her mother's, a tin of tooth powder, and at the very bottom, wrapped in a piece of clean linen, a stub of charcoal, and 3 small scraps of paper. The paper had come from Sister Bridget years ago. The old nun had pressed it into Wynne's hand the day she left for Ravencrest Keep. In case you ever need to send word, child. Words on paper carry farther than words in the throat. Wynne had never used them. She had thought she never would. She took the smallest scrap. She held the charcoal in her fingers. Her hand shook so badly the first letter came out as a smear. She wiped it with her thumb. She started again. What to say? What to say? She had so little time. She had to be quick. She had to be clear. The king would have only a moment to read it. Her hands would not stop trembling. The charcoal slipped. She wrote 3 lines. Short, brutal, the truth. Your beta sold you out. They're in position. Poisoned silver. She read the words. She read them again. Her stomach turned. She folded the scrap of paper into a square no larger than a fingernail. She slipped it into the cuff of her sleeve. She closed the chest. She rose. She caught her own reflection in the small piece of polished tin that hung above one of the wash basins. Her face was the color of milk. Her dark hair was loose at the temples. Her eyes were too wide, too dark. She looked like a girl going to her execution. In a way, perhaps, she was. The great hall in full feast was a different world. The doors opened, and Wynne stepped through with her wine pitcher. And for a moment, the noise and the light and the heat hit her like a physical blow. Hundreds of guests, tables groaning under the weight of roasted meats, spiced wine, candied fruits, pies the size of cartwheels. Musicians in the gallery played a slow processional on lutes and drums. The fire pits along the walls roared. The pack was at full strength. Werewolves in their human forms, lords in deep velvets, ladies in silks the color of jewels. The high table sat upon the dais at the far end of the hall, raised 3 steps above the rest. It was the longest table in the room, and in the center of it, in a high-backed chair carved with running wolves, sat King Alaric Ravencrest. He wore a tunic of deep crimson tonight, a heavy silver chain across his shoulders. His dark hair was brushed back. His expression was still, composed, the mask of a king at a feast. To his right sat Beta Tristan Croft. Tristan was laughing. He was leaning toward an elder lord at his right, telling some joke, his silver goblet already lifted halfway to his lips. He was glowing with charm, with ease, with the absolute confidence of a man who believed his enemy was already dead and simply did not know it yet. Wine's hands shook. She forced them still. She walked. The serving hierarchy at a feast like this was strict. The lower servants poured for the lower tables. The senior wine maid served the high table. Wynne was, by no measure, a senior wine maid. But Marta, in the chaos of the kitchens, had simply shoved a pitcher into her hands and pointed at the high table and shouted, "Go!" A small mercy. Or the hand of something larger. Wynne climbed the 3 steps of the dais. The first lord she served was an elder she did not know. She poured. She did not spill. She moved to the next and the next. She worked her way down the line. She did not look at the king. She did not look at Tristan. Then she was there. Standing beside the king's chair, Alaric did not look at her either. He held out his goblet. A small gesture, almost dismissive. Wynne lifted her pitcher. She thought of her grandmother. Kindness needs no permission. She thought of the king's tired eyes. She thought of the poisoned silver waiting in the gallery above. She took a breath. And then she pretended to stumble. It was not a large stumble, just enough. Her foot caught on nothing at all. The pitcher tipped. A few drops of dark red wine splashed onto the white linen of the high table. Clumsy fool. The voice was Tristan's. Sharp, cutting. His eyes flashed amber for a single instant. The wolf, just beneath the surface. "Watch your hands, human. Forgive me. Forgive me, your grace." Wynne dropped to her knees beside the king's chair. She grabbed a cloth from her apron. She began to wipe up the spilled wine. Her body was between the king and the rest of the table for one heartbeat. One single heartbeat. It was all she needed. Her left hand pressed the folded scrap of paper into the king's palm beneath the table. His fingers closed around it. He did not flinch. He did not look down. He did not look at her. Wynne kept wiping. Her hands were steady now. Strange. The tremblings had stopped. Perhaps because the worst of it was over. Or perhaps because the worst of it was just beginning. "My apologies, your grace," she murmured. "It is nothing." His voice was flat, cold, the voice of a king to a servant. "Return to your duties." She bowed her head. She rose. She stepped backward off the dais. She did not turn until she was 3 steps away. Then she walked, steady, quiet, into the shadows of the servants' alcove. She did not look back, but she could feel him reading. Alaric Ravencrest did not flinch. He had learned long ago how to wear a face. He had learned in the wars his father had fought. He had learned in the council chambers when men twice his age had tried to bend him. He had learned 3 years ago, when his wife had died with their unborn son still inside her, and he had walked into the great hall and announced the news without his voice breaking even once. A king did not flinch, but beneath the table, his thumb unfolded the small square of paper. He glanced down for the briefest moment. The words were charcoal, smeared in places, but legible. Your beta sold you out. They're in position. Poisoned silver. His heart did not change rhythm. It had been trained better than that. The wolf inside him, however, rose. He turned his head a fraction. He looked at Tristan. Tristan was laughing again, white knuckles around his goblet. Eyes darting, just for a fraction of a second, toward the upper gallery. The gallery where the candlelight did not quite reach. Alaric's gaze drifted upward, casually, as a man might glance at a tapestry. As a man might admire the carved beams. There, behind the second pillar, the faint metallic gleam of crossbow steel. He closed his hand around the scrap of paper. He slipped it into the small pocket inside his tunic. He lifted his goblet. He took a slow sip of wine. He smiled. He did not feel it. But he smiled. Then he turned to his beta. Tristan, brother, the air grows close in here. I require a moment in the corridor. Be ready to begin your toast when I return. Tristan's smile faltered for a fraction of a heartbeat. My king. The feast has barely begun, and it will continue. Briefly without me, Alaric rose. His full height drew every eye in the room. The musicians paused. The hall quieted, then resumed. He walked. He did not look back. He passed through the heavy oak doors behind the dais. He stepped into the servants' corridor. He closed the doors behind him, and then he ran. Not far, just to the alcove halfway down the hall, where he knew, somehow, the girl would be. She was there, pressed against the wall, her face the color of bone. She saw him. She dropped to her knees. Mercy, your grace. He crossed the distance in 2 strides. He did not yell. He could not. Time was a knife now, each second cutting. He crouched. He took her by the shoulders. He lifted her gently to her feet. Look at me, she did, Win Hartley. Yes. How do you know this? The cellars. I went down for the wine. I heard them in the armory corridor. The beta is and a southern man. They are in the upper gallery and the eastern solar. The bolts are silver. They are coated with wolfsbane. The beta said he will signal them by raising his goblet, by toasting your health. Each word was a hammer. Alaric's jaw locked. Why? He asked. His voice was rougher now. Why did you tell me? Tristan would have spared you. You are nothing to him, a maid. If you stay silent, you live. If you speak, you die. He said as much. He said no witnesses. Yes? She nodded. Yes. Then why? Her chin lifted. My grandmother taught me. Kindness needs no permission. He stared at her. The wolf inside him went very still, and she added, softer now, last winter. You opened the granaries to the human servants. They said it was a waste. You did it anyway. My grandmother. She would have died. So would I. I owed you a life, your grace. I am only giving it back. Alaric did not speak. He could not. He had spent 3 years being a king without being a man. He had built walls. He had buried things. He had stopped expecting any voice in his life to say something like this. He reached out. He touched the side of her face, just for a moment. His thumb beneath her chin. Stay in this alcove, do not move. My guards will come for you when it is finished. Do you understand? Yes. Win? Yes? Your grace? Thank you. He turned. He walked away. By the time he reached the doors of the great hall, he was a king again. But something had cracked open inside him, and it would not close. The pack link was a thing of the mind. A silver thread that ran between every wolf bonded to the alpha. Tristan was inside it. Tristan would hear everything Alaric thought to the pack as a whole, so Alaric did not use it. He used a narrower channel. One he had built years ago, in secret, with only one other person. His gamma, Reuben Hale. He reached for it now. He felt Reuben on the other end, standing at his post by the great hall doors, sword sheathed, calm, ready. Reuben, a pause. Then, my king, listen carefully. The beta has betrayed us. Southern archers in the upper gallery and the eastern solar, crossbows. Silver bolts laced with wolfsbane. They wait for Tristan's toast as the signal to fire. A second of silence on the line. Then a flood of cold, lethal rage that made even Alaric's wolf shiver. Ors, my king, take 6 of the vanguard. Move through the hidden passages. Stealth only. Flank the archers. Do not engage until I give the word. I will lead Tristan into the toast. When his goblet rises, take them, all of them, spare none. And the beta? Leave him to me. Understood. The line went quiet. Alaric pushed open the doors of the great hall. He smoothed his face into a mask of calm. He walked back to his seat. The musicians had begun a softer tune. The conversations at the tables had grown louder with wine. Tristan looked up. His smile snapped back into place. Feeling better, brother? Much better. Alaric sat. He poured himself a fresh cup of wine from a different pitcher than the one Wynne had carried. He raised it to his lips. He did not drink. He let his gaze drift upward, just for a heartbeat, to the gallery. He could see them more clearly now that he was looking. 3 shapes, crouched, crossbows ready. Aimed at his chest, he could feel Reuben moving above, like a shadow, like a knife in the dark. 2 more minutes, Reuben said in his mind, "Hold him." Alaric turned to Tristan. "You mentioned a toast." Tristan's eyes lit up. "The fool. The poor, stupid, grasping fool. Indeed, my king." Tristan stood. The scrape of his chair against the stone floor was loud in the hall. He lifted his goblet. He raised his free hand. The room began to quiet. The musicians faded their tune. 100 faces. Then 200. Then every face in the hall turned to the high table. Tristan's voice rang out. Strong, smooth, brothers and sisters of the northern faction. Tonight we celebrate the harvest. We celebrate our strength. But most of all, we celebrate the man who leads us. A king of unyielding power. To King Alaric, may his reign be long. May his health be unbroken. He raised his goblet high. In the gallery above, 3 pairs of hands tightened on 3 crossbow triggers. Alaric did not raise his cup. He smiled. It was the smile of a wolf. "Take them," he whispered. The shadows above erupted. There was no warning. The southern assassins had time only to draw breath. Massive dark shapes moved behind them in the gallery, fast as falling stars. There was a sound. A wet, terrible sound. Then another. Then the 3rd crossbow fired wildly into the air. The bolt buried itself in a roasted pig at the center of a lesser table, 3 feet from a startled noblewoman. The hall screamed. 3 bodies, clad in the dark leather of the southern faction, tumbled over the gallery railing, crashed onto the stone floor of the great hall in a heap of broken limbs. Tristan's goblet was still raised in the air. He did not move. His face went pale, white, whiter, until he looked like a man already dead. Alaric stood. The whole hall went silent. The fire crackled. The candles trembled in their holders. "Brother," Alaric said, softly, just for Tristan, just for the 2 of them, in the silence that had taken the world. "Was there something you wanted to tell me?" Tristan dropped the goblet. It hit the table, rolled, fell off the edge, clanged against the stone. He ran. He had not even fully turned before Reuben was upon him. The gamma had come down from the gallery already. He moved like a hawk falling. He took Tristan to the floor with a single brutal motion. Knee in the back, wrist twisted up behind the spine. Tristan howled, more wolf than man for that single moment, and then Reuben pressed a silver dagger to the back of his neck, and the howl died. "Bind him," Alaric said. The great hall began to roar, with confusion, with fear, with the dawning rage of 300 wolves who had nearly lost their king. Loyal vanguards moved. Doors were sealed. Lords were ushered. Ladies were calmed. Order of a kind returned. Alaric stood at the head of the dais. He watched as Reuben hauled Tristan to his feet. Tristan's nose was bleeding. His eyes were wild. He looked at Alaric the way a drowning man looks at a shore he cannot reach. "Take him to the dungeons," Alaric said. "Silver chains. No visitors. No words. I will come to him at dawn." Reuben dragged him toward the doors, but Tristan, at the last moment, twisted his head. He scanned the hall. He found her, Wynne, standing now in the doorway of the servants' alcove, pale, small. Watching Tristan's eyes locked onto hers, he smiled. It was a terrible smile. The smile of a man who knew he was going to die, but knew also that he would not die alone. "Little maid," his voice carried. The hall hushed to hear it. "You think this is over?" Wynne did not answer. "There are more of us. We are in the walls. We are at the table. We are pouring the wine. You have not seen our faces, but we have seen yours," he laughed. "You have signed your own death warrant. Sleep lightly, girl. Out. Alaric's voice was a blade. Get him out. Reuben struck Tristan across the temple. The settee sagged. Reuben dragged him through the doors. The doors closed. The hall held its breath. Alaric stood very still at the head of his table. His eyes found Wynne across the wide stone floor. She was trembling. Not from cold. He held her gaze. He could not cross the room to her. Not in front of all these eyes. Not yet. But he willed her to see what he was telling her without words. You are not alone. I will not let them touch you. You will live through this. She nodded. Once. Small. Just for him. Then she pressed her hands together against her apron to stop their shaking. And she stood very straight as her grandmother had ever stood. Outside, the wind picked up. It moved through the broken stained glass window. It carried the smell of smoke and blood and turning leaves. Autumn had only just begun, and the war for Ravencrest Keep had not ended. It had only just opened its first red eye. The dungeons of Ravencrest Keep had no windows. Alaric descended the spiral stair at dawn, a single torch in his left hand, his sword at his hip. The stone walls wept with old damp. The air smelled of iron and mold, and the faint metallic tang of silver. He did not bring guards. He wanted no witnesses for what came next. Tristan was in the deepest cell, bound to an iron ring in the wall by silver chains that hissed against his wrists. The skin beneath was already raw. His head hung low. His dark hair was matted with dried blood from the blow Reuben had given him. He looked up when Alaric stopped at the bars. He smiled. A weak smile. A broken smile. But still a smile, brother. You lost the right to call me that. And yet, Alaric set the torch in the iron sconce beside the cell. The light made Tristan's face look like wax. Who is the second? Tristan tilted his head against the wall. He laughed, a dry, hollow sound, straight to it. No reunion. No years of friendship to weigh against the question. There is no friendship. There is only the question. Then I have no answer, Tristan. I do not know his name. You know enough. I know that Lord Blackwood has another agent in your court, closer to you than I ever was. I know that the Southern Army marches on the winter solstice. I know that this agent has been thinning your border patrols for months, adjusting rotations. Quietly, carefully, the way a man pulls feathers from a bird, one at a time, so the bird does not notice it cannot fly until it is too late. Alaric did not move. A name. I never met him. We spoke through emissaries. I dealt with the Southern man in the lower town. The agent in your court was a shape behind a curtain. You expect me to believe that. I expect nothing. Alaric's hand closed around the iron bar. The metal groaned beneath his grip. You took an oath. I took many oaths. You stood beside me when my wife was buried. You held my arm when I could not stand. You said you would die before you let harm come to this house. Tristan's face changed. Just for a moment. A flicker. Something that might have been grief if Alaric still believed Tristan capable of it. And you believed me, Tristan said. That was always your weakness, Alaric. You believed the people who told you what you wanted to hear. Why? Why what? Why turn? Because. Tristan's voice was suddenly very tired. Because I waited my whole life to stand beside a king, and I never wanted to be the one standing beside him. Alaric stared at him. He waited for more. Tristan said nothing else. The maid, Alaric said. Wynne Hartley. You threatened her in the great hall. You said your people would come for her. I said true things. If anything happens to her, you'll what? Tristan's smile returned, thin and crooked. Kill me twice. Alaric turned. He took the torch from the sconce. Brother. Tristan's voice followed him. One thing. Alaric paused. The agent is close to you. Closer than I ever was. Closer than Reuben. When you find him, look at the people you stopped suspecting years ago. Look at the ones you trust without thinking. Alaric climbed the stair. He did not look back, but the words climbed with him. The chamber they gave her was 3 times the size of the dormitory she had shared with 20 other women. Wynne stood in the doorway and could not make herself step inside. A 4-poster bed. Heavy velvet curtains. A hearth taller than she was, with a fire already lit. A wardrobe of dark mahogany. A washstand with a porcelain basin and a pitcher painted with blue cornflowers. A window of real glass leaded into diamond shapes, looking out over the southern gardens. It was a room for a lady. She was not a lady. A maid was lighting the candles along the mantel. She turned when Wynne entered. She curtsied, stiffly. Her eyes were on the floor. Mistress Hartley. Mistress. Wynne flinched at the word. There has been some kind of mistake. No mistake, mistress. The king himself gave the orders. This is to be your chamber. There are gowns in the wardrobe. The king has also ordered that your grandmother be moved into the chamber adjoining this one. The castle healer is with her now. She is comfortable. Wynne's throat closed. My grandmother. Yes, mistress, the king said. He said no one of your blood would sleep in a cottage with a leaking roof while you served his house. Wynne sat down on the edge of the bed. She had to. Her knees gave out. The maid finished with the candles. She curtsied again. She left. Wynne did not move for a long time. The fire crackled. The room was warm. The room was warmer than any room she had ever been inside in her whole life. Her grandmother was being tended. Her grandmother was being kept warm. Her grandmother was inside a wall of stone that would keep the wind out. Wynne pressed her hands to her face. She did not cry. She had not cried in years. She did not know how anymore. But she sat there for a long time, with her hands pressed to her face, and her shoulders shook, and her breath caught, and she made no sound at all. 3 days later, she was summoned to the king's study. She walked the corridors of the upper keep in a borrowed gown of deep gray wool. The hem dragged on the stone. The bodice did not fit her properly. She had refused the silks. The gray wool was the simplest gown in the wardrobe, and even it felt like wearing someone else's skin. The guards at the study door did not stop her. They opened the door without speaking. Alaric was at his desk. Maps spread across it. His sleeves were rolled to the elbow. His hair was damp as though he had only just come from washing. He did not look up when she entered. Wynne, your grace. Sit, she did, in a high-backed chair near the fire. She folded her hands in her lap. She kept her back very straight. He continued to study the map for a long moment. Then he set down the quill in his hand and looked at her. How is your grandmother better? Thank you. The healer says her lungs are clearing. She says you have given her 10 more years. Good. A pause. Wynne. Yes, I am making you the royal archivist. She did not understand. The what? Royal archivist. You will have the run of the royal library and the records vaults. You will have access to ledgers, treaties, correspondence. You will be answerable to me and to no one else. Your Grace, I have already announced it to the council this morning. Your Grace, I cannot what? I cannot read. She said it quickly, like ripping a stitch. She did not look at him. There was a long silence. Wynne, Sister Bridget taught me letters when I was small. Enough to write 3 words on a scrap of paper. Enough to sign my own name. I cannot read a ledger. I cannot read a treaty. I would shame you. The pack would laugh. You have read my map, You have been looking at it since you sat down. Your eyes have moved across it. Tell me what you see? She blinked. She had not realized she had been looking. She glanced down again. The map was of the Northern Territories. There were markings she did not understand, but there were also the things she could see plainly. Black ink lines for roads, blue for rivers, small red circles where, she guessed, watchtowers stood. A larger red mark over what she thought was the southern border. I see roads and rivers, and those small red marks. I think those are towers, and the bigger red mark. That is where the Southern Army is. He looked at her. You have just done what half my council struggles to do. That is not reading. It is reading the only thing that matters. You see what is in front of you, and you see what is missing. That is a rarer gift than letters. Your Grace, you will be taught. I will arrange it. A scholar, discreet. He will come to the archives in the evenings. No one will know you do not already read. Within a year, you will read better than half the lords who sit at my table. She stared at him. Why? Why what? Why are you doing this for me? He was quiet for a long moment. Because you saved my life. Because I will not have my savior scrubbing kitchen pots while assassins look for her face. Because in this castle, an archivist may be anywhere at any hour without question. And because I want you near me where I can keep you safe. The last part. He had not meant to say it. She saw him register it the moment after it left his mouth. He looked away first, down at his map. He picked up the quill. You may go, Win. She rose. She walked toward the door. She stopped with her hand on the latch. Your Grace. Yes, thank you. She did not wait for him to answer. She stepped through the door. She walked very fast down the corridor. Her face burned the whole way. The royal gardens were already half dead with the season. Win walked the gravel paths because she could not bear the chamber. 3 weeks had passed since the feast. The frost had bitten the rosebeds. The fountains had been drained for winter. A few stubborn marigolds clung to life along the southern wall. She had her own basket today. 3 ledgers in it. She'd been studying them under the patient eye of the old scholar the king had sent her. His name was Master Ennis. He had hands like dry leaves. He smelled of pipe smoke. He never laughed at her. He never sighed when she struggled. She had begun to read. Slowly, painfully. 1 letter at a time, then 1 word, then 1 phrase. Her favorite hour of the day had become the hour just before dawn, when the castle slept, and she sat in the great library with a single candle and worked through a single page of a single ledger. But she had not come here today for reading. She had come because Lady Imogen Marsh had sent her a note that morning. A walk in the gardens, Mistress Archivist. Just the 2 of us. I should so like to know my new neighbor. There was no refusing it. Imogen was the daughter of one of the most powerful lords in the Western Ridges. Imogen's father commanded 40 miles of borderland. To refuse her was to insult half the north. So Win walked and waited. She heard the footsteps before she saw the woman. Imogen Marsh came around the bend in the path like a knife through silk. She was 30 years old, tall. Her hair was the color of dark honey, coiled at the base of her neck with silver pins. Her gown was emerald wool, lined with white fur at the throat. Her eyes were the color of cold spring water. Beautiful, cruel. She stopped in front of Win and looked her up and down. She did not curtsy. Win did not either. She did not know the protocol. She suspected no protocol existed for a kitchen maid and a noblewoman meeting in a frost-killed garden. Mistress Hartley, Lady Marsh, I have wanted to meet you. Properly, you honor me. Imogen began to walk. Slowly, her gloved hand brushed the dry rose bushes as she passed. Tell me, Win. May I call you Win? We are practically sisters now, are we not? All of us crowded together at the high table. Of course, Lady Marsh, you know the king's wife is buried in the crypt below the chapel. Did anyone tell you that? Win's chest tightened. I knew 3 years ago. She was a wolf of the northern bloodline. Strong, beautiful. She died in childbirth. The child died with her. A son, did you know that? A son, I did not. Imogen's hand drifted to a frost-blackened bloom. She crushed it between her fingers. The king has buried a wife. A son, his mother before that. His father before that. Everyone Alaric loves dies, Win. Have you noticed? It is almost a curse, my lady. I do not say this to frighten you. I say it as one woman to another, a warning. A kindness. Imogen turned to look at her. The king cannot love. Not anymore. Whatever he has shown you, whatever favor, whatever soft eyes across a study. It is grief, child, not love. Grief wearing the mask of love. And grief, when it tires of the mask, sets it aside. And the one who wore the mask is left holding nothing. Win's hands were cold. She kept her chin up. Lady Marsh, yes, my grandmother taught me. Kindness needs no permission. How quaint. And I have a question. Oh, if I am nothing, if the king cannot love, if I am a girl who has nothing to offer but a few short years of attention, then why have you walked all the way out here in the cold to tell me so? The silence that followed was not a silence. It was a held blade. Imogen smiled. The smile did not touch her eyes. Be careful, little mouse. The walls of this castle have very long teeth. So I have noticed. A deep voice spoke from the path behind them. Lady Marsh. Both women turned. Alaric. He stood with his hands behind his back. His expression was unreadable. But his eyes were the color of the gray storm now. Not the tired gray of their first meeting, the other gray. The one before lightning, Imogen curtsied. Beautifully, deeply, Your Grace, you are far from your chambers. I came to welcome our new archivist. How thoughtful, I am nothing if not. Return to your chambers, Lady Marsh. Of course, Your Grace. She glided past Alaric. As she passed, she dropped her voice, just enough that Wynne almost did not hear her. You will tire of her by spring. She walked on. Alaric did not turn his head. He did not respond. He waited until Imogen was out of sight. Then he closed the distance to Wynne in 3 long strides. Did she hurt you? Only my pride. Pride is a luxury we cannot afford right now. I have noticed. He let out something that was almost a laugh. Almost. He did not laugh easily. She suspected he had not laughed in a very long time. He offered her his arm. She stared at it. Walk with me. She took his arm. The warmth of him through the sleeve. The size of him beside her. She had to take 2 steps to his one. She tried not to think about any of it. They walked. Reuben intercepted a southern raven this morning. And Blackwood is moving troops toward the Weeping River. The agent inside this castle has been sending him our vanguard rotations. We are being prepared for slaughter from the inside. Have you a suspect? Many. Trusting anyone in this house has become a black art, except me. He looked down at her. Except you. They had come to the glass conservatory at the end of the south garden. It rose from the dead lawn like a small jewel. A glass house built 50 years ago, kept warm year-round by underground pipes from the kitchens. Inside, even now, winter jasmine bloomed in white cascades. The smell, when Alaric pushed open the door, was the smell of summer. Ween stepped inside. The warmth wrapped around her like a blanket. The white blossoms hung above her head. A bee somehow alive in this season buzzed lazily past her ear. Alaric stopped just inside the door. She turned to look at him. You have no wolf, he said. No pack ties. No allegiance to any of the squabbling lords in this castle. You are the only person here, Wynne, the only one in the whole keep, that I can be certain is loyal to me. To me. Not to my crown. To me always, he reached out. He brushed a strand of dark hair behind her ear. His thumb lingered just below her cheekbone. For one moment, the king of the Northern Territories was not a king. He was a man who had been very tired for a very long time, and his hand was shaking, just slightly. She felt it. She did not speak. She could not. Then her eyes shifted, past his shoulder, through the glass roof of the conservatory, a shape on the parapet above, a glint of metal in the morning sun. A crossbow, Alaric move. She did not think. She slammed both palms against his chest. He was twice her weight. He should not have moved, but she had the strength of pure animal terror, and his own body, trained in 100 battles, responded to the warning before his mind caught up. He twisted. The crossbow bolt punched through the glass roof. It missed his back by less than the width of a hand. It struck Wynne in the shoulder. She felt the impact before the pain. A hard, cold punch, then heat, then everything turning slow and far away. She heard glass falling around them like rain. She heard Alaric roar. It was not a sound a human throat could make. It shook the panes of the conservatory. The bee fell dead from the air. She heard the bolt at the same time she felt herself dropping. He caught her before she hit the floor, his face above her. The gray storm in his eyes had become a wildfire of gold. Wynne. Wynne, stay with me. She tried to speak. Silver. Her voice did not feel like her own. It is. Silver. He looked down at the bolt buried just below her collarbone. His face changed. A silver bolt in a wolf was death. A silver bolt in a human, treated quickly, was a wound. But silver bolts were not all the southern man had spoken about. Was it? He was already lifting her. Was it the same? Wolfsbane. Did they? She did not know. She could not say. The world was getting very white at the edges. Reuben. His voice was a thunderclap that carried through every stone of the castle. She heard running footsteps. She heard Reuben's voice. She heard other voices. She heard the king say something to the guards in a tone she had never heard before. Something cold. Something killing. Then she was being carried. She turned her face into his chest because she did not want anyone to see her cry. She had not cried in years, but now she could not stop. She woke in her own chamber. The fire was burning. The curtains were drawn. The bolt was gone from her shoulder. There was a bandage wrapped tight around the wound. Her arm in a sling. It hurt. It hurt in a deep, throbbing way, but she was alive. And he was there. Alaric was sitting in a chair beside her bed. His head was bowed. His hands were locked together. His sleeves were dark with dried blood. Her blood. He had not changed. She tried to lift her good hand. The motion caught his attention. He was beside her in a second. He took her hand in both of his. "You are awake." The bolt was silver. But there was no wolfsbane on it. "The healer says you will heal. There will be a scar." Pretty, a noise from his chest. Almost a laugh. Almost a sob. She could not tell when. "I'm here. That bolt was not meant for me." She blinked at him. "What? It was meant for you. The angle. The position. The shooter waited until I was distant from you. He fired at a moment when you were turning toward the door. He aimed at you when, the agent in this castle. He came for you." She closed her eyes. She let the news settle into her bones. She should have been afraid. Instead, she felt something colder and clearer. She felt useful. She was a target, which meant she mattered, which meant the agent had been listening, which meant the agent knew that the king and the archivist had begun to look in the right direction, which meant she opened her eyes. "Alaric, yes. The grain shipments. What? Master Ennis has been teaching me to read the ledgers. The grain shipments, the ones going south to the border towns. Every third one is marked with a small seal, a rose with thorns. I noticed it last week. I thought it was nothing, a trade route mark. But he was already standing. "Show me. I cannot walk." "I will carry you, Alaric. I will carry you to the library and I will hold the ledgers while you read them to me. Do you understand?" Yes. He lifted her with infinite care. He carried her through the corridors of the royal wing, wrapped in the blanket from her bed. The guards stationed at every junction lowered their eyes. None of them spoke. The library was empty at this hour. Master Ennis had gone to his quarters for the night. The candles were already lit. Wynn's ledgers were stacked on her usual table. Alaric set her down in the great cushioned chair by the fire. He brought her the ledgers one by one. She turned pages with her good hand. He bent over her shoulder. She could feel the heat of him. She could feel his breath move her hair. She pointed. "There, third shipment. The rose with thorns. And here, 3 weeks later. Same mark. Look at the quantity. Twice the standard wagon load. Bypass seal on all of them. No inspection at the Eastern Road Station." He stared. "Whose seal is the rose?" She did not say it. She did not have to. He said it for her. "Lord Percival Hollow?" "Yes." He stepped back from the chair. He pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes. "My master of coin. The man who has held my purse for 9 years. The man who knew Tristan well. The man whose seal authorizes every grain shipment in the kingdom." Yes, he let his hands drop. "And the woman who has been telling everyone that I am cursed. Lady Marsh. Yes. Yes. Her father commands the western ridges. The exact path Blackwood's army would take to flank us. The exact route the smuggled grain wagons have been traveling. They have been arming each other and distracting me with insults and warnings and concerned looks at council while their men move into position." He took her good hand. He raised it to his lips. He pressed a kiss to her knuckles. It was not a passionate kiss. It was the kiss of a man making a vow. "You saved my life," he said. "And now you have shown me the second knife. Tomorrow at council, I will draw both of them into the light, and then we will see whose blood feeds the floor of my hall. Alaric, yes. There is one more thing." He waited. "The hand that fired the bolt today." He was someone the guards did not stop. He walked the parapet of my own conservatory in broad daylight. He had a clear shot at the king and his archivist, and no one questioned him. Which means she watched his face. She watched the answer arrive in his eyes, which means he wore the uniform of the Royal Guard. "Yes, he is one of mine, yes." A silence fell. Heavy. "Old. Reuben," Alaric said, almost to himself. "Reuben was the one who ordered the rotations for the conservatory parapet today. I know you think she did not answer. She did not want to answer. "Listen to me." Alaric crouched in front of her chair. He took both of her hands now, gently, around the sling. I have known Reuben since we were boys. He went to war with me. He held the line at the bitter pass when half the vanguard was bleeding. If I know, I cannot, I know, but you think it might be him. I think we cannot afford to be sure of anyone. Not even him. Especially not him. He closed his eyes. She saw in the firelight how very tired he was. He had buried a wife, a son. He had lost a beta to treason in the space of a single evening, and now she was asking him to suspect the man who had pulled him out of the wreckage 3 years ago. She did not say it lightly. She wished she did not have to say it at all. I will watch him, Alaric said at last. I will tell him nothing. You will tell him nothing. We will move on Hollow and Marsh tomorrow at council. We will see what shakes loose. Yes, win, yes. Promise me something, anything. If anything goes wrong tomorrow, if the council goes badly, if the Southern Army moves before we expect, if anything, his grip tightened, then gentled. Promise me you will get to your grandmother, and you will get out. There are passages beneath the keep. I will tell you which ones. I want a word from you. A promise, no win. I said no. You are wounded. You are a target. I cannot. Alaric Ravencrest. Listen to me. She had never used his full name before. He went very still. I did not bring you a note across a feast hall to leave you alone in the second act. I am not leaving. I am not running. I am the royal archivist, and I am the one who saw the seal on the ledgers, and I am the one whose face the agent already knows. I have nowhere to hide that he cannot find me, so I will stand with you tomorrow at council, and I will read the ledgers aloud, and we will see what the agents of the South do when their faces are pulled into the light. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he laughed. It was a rough, surprised, almost unwilling laugh, as though he had forgotten how, as though the laughter belonged to a different man, a younger man, one he had not seen in a very long time. You, he said, you are the most stubborn human I have ever met. My grandmother says it runs in the family. I am beginning to think your grandmother is the most dangerous person in this castle. She would be flattered. He stood. He bent. He kissed her on the forehead. It was a small kiss, quiet. The kind of kiss a man gives a woman he has decided, somewhere in the deep places where decisions are made before words are found to keep. She felt it down to her toes. Sleep, he said. I will carry you back to your chamber. Tomorrow we burn the rot out of this house. Together, he carried her through the corridors. Her cheek against his shoulder, the wound throbbing in time with her heartbeat. The castle quiet around them. Above the parapets, the moon was almost full. The wind smelled of coming snow. In a cell 4 stories below, Tristan Croft slept against his silver chains. In a chamber at the western edge of the keep, Lady Imogen Marsh sat at her writing desk and composed a letter she did not yet know she would never finish sending. In the Master of Coins' quarters, Lord Percival Hollow counted out 50 gold coins and slid them into a leather pouch for a courier who was already dead. And in the guard barracks below the eastern tower, a man took off the royal uniform he had worn that morning. He washed his hands. He hung the coat carefully on its peg. He sat down on his cot. He picked up a small folded letter from his bedside table. He read it. He held it to the candle flame. He watched it burn. Then he closed his eyes, and he waited for tomorrow. Dawn broke gray and brittle over Ravencrest Keep. The High Council chamber sat in the oldest wing of the castle. Its walls were 500 years of stone. Its ceiling was carved with the faces of every alpha who had ever ruled the North. At the center stood a single round oak table, polished by 10 generations of hands. 22 chairs surrounded it. Alaric sat at the head. Wynne sat at his right. The chair at his right was the chair of the Beta. It had been Tristan's chair for 14 years. Now a human woman sat in it, her arm in a sling, a stack of leather ledgers on the table before her. The lords entered. They saw her. Their steps slowed, their eyes widened, then their masks of courtesy returned. They took their seats. They nodded to the king. They did not nod to her. Lord Percival Hollow sat across from her. He was 45, lean, impeccable in midnight blue velvet. His hair was silver at the temples. He smiled at Wynne. A small, polite smile. The smile of a man who believed he was 3 steps ahead. Lady Imogen Marsh sat to his left. She did not smile. Her cold, spring eyes flicked over Winston's sling and away again. Reuben Hale stood by the door. His sword was sheathed. His face was unreadable. Wayne had not slept. She had spent the night with her good hand pressed over her grandmother's heart, listening to the soft rise and fall of the old woman's breath in the room beside hers. She had not told Mabel about the bolt. She had not told her about the council. She had only kissed her forehead and said, "I love you." Grandmother and Mabel, half asleep, had said, "Kindness needs no permission, child, and you have always known it." Now she sat at a council table. She did not feel like a council member. She felt like a girl in a borrowed gown, with charcoal still under her fingernails from the ledger pages. But she sat very straight. Alaric began. "I have called this council to address the threat from the south. Lord Garrick Blackwood has massed forces near the Weeping River. He intends to march on the winter solstice. We will be ready." A ripple moved around the table. Lord Percival leaned forward. His voice was smooth. "Concerned, Your Grace, a siege will exhaust us. The western trade routes feed our winter stores. If Blackwood cuts them, we starve before the thaw. I urge you to consider an emissary, a truce, even a brief one. To buy us time." Alaric did not move. "A truce? Yes, Your Grace. Or perhaps we should simply open the gates and spare him the trouble of breaking them down." The room went very still. Percival's smile did not falter, but the muscles around his eyes tightened. "I do not understand your meaning, Your Grace." Alaric turned his head. "When?" She slid the topmost ledger across the table. It came to a stop in front of Percival. The ledger was open. On the page were 3 columns of grain shipments, each marked in faint pink wax with a small seal, a rose, with thorns. Percival's eyes dropped to the page. He did not breathe. "Every 3rd shipment to the southern border for the last 11 months, Wynne said. Her voice was clear, not loud, but every lord at the table heard her. "Authorized by your personal seal, Lord Hollow, bypassing inspection at the Eastern Road Station. Twice the standard wagon load. Carrying, by your own ledger entries, surplus wheat." She paused. "There is no surplus wheat, my lord. There has not been a surplus harvest in 3 years. The grain stores are at half their usual count. So I ask myself, what was in those wagons?" Percival's smile was gone. "You ask me to believe," he said, "that a human girl who could not read a year ago has uncovered. Lord Hollow, this is a fabrication. A desperate." Lord Hollow, Alaric's voice was a blade. Percival stopped speaking. "Look at me." The master of coin raised his eyes to his king. "I have not yet asked you a question. When I do, you will answer me. Until then, you will be silent." Percival closed his mouth. His knuckles on the table were white. His eyes flicked, just once.
Toward Imogen Marsh,
It was the smallest motion,
a man drowning.
reaching, instinctively, for the hand he believed would lift him. The whole council saw it. Imogen's face went the color of bone. She rose. The legs of her chair scraped against the stone. "This is a farce," she said. Her voice was tight. "Your Grace, I will not sit here while a kitchen girl accuses a master of coin of treason on the basis of a wax seal. I will not lend my name to." "Sit down, Lady Marsh. I will not." "Sit down." She did not. Her chest was rising and falling too fast. Alaric stood. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Reuben." Reuben took 1 step forward from the door. His hand rested on the hilt of his sword. Imogen looked at him, and something snapped in her face. Because she saw, in that moment, that Reuben was not coming to her aid. Because she had been so certain. Because someone had told her Reuben was theirs. And that someone had been lying. She moved, faster than a human eye could track. Her bones cracked, her face elongated, half shifted, half monster. Claws where her gloved fingers had been a heartbeat ago. She did not lunge for the king. She knew she could not take an alpha. She lunged across the table at Wynne. Wynne could not move fast enough. Her arm was in a sling. Her body was still healing. But she did not have to move. Because Reuben was already there. He had crossed the room in the half-second it had taken Imogen to begin her leap. He intercepted her in midair, took her down with his full weight. They crashed into the stone floor. The oak table shook. Reuben pinned her, knee on her spine. Silver dagger pressed against the back of her skull. She thrashed, she snarled. She did not get free. Imogen Marsh, Alaric said, you are under arrest for high treason and attempted assassination of the royal archivist. You fool. She was spitting blood from where she had bitten her own tongue in the change. You arrogant fool. You think you have won. You have won nothing. Aldrich will. She stopped. Her own mouth had betrayed her. She knew it instantly. Alaric's eyes did not change. Aldrich who? Lady Marsh, I misspoke. Aldrich who? She said nothing. Reuben pressed the dagger more firmly. My lady. Answered the king. I will not. Then you will rot in the same dungeon as the beta, Alaric said, and you will rot longer. Take her. The guards came. They bound her in silver chain. They dragged her out. Percival they took in irons of common iron, because he was human enough in the moment of his fall that wolfsbane was not needed. He did not resist. His face had collapsed into the gray, slack expression of a man who had already calculated the rest of his life and found it short. The doors of the council chamber closed. The lords sat in shocked silence. Alaric stood at the head of the table. His hand found Win's shoulder. Just for a moment. A small pressure. You did well. She did not breathe again until he released her. Then, a sound. From somewhere far below the castle, a dull, deep, rolling boom. The floor of the council chamber trembled. Dust fell from the carved ceiling. The deep, mournful wail of the castle's warning horn began once. Twice, 3 times, Alaric's head came up. His eyes blazed gold. They are inside the walls. The lower courtyard was already burning. Alaric stood on the high balcony above it. Win beside him. Reuben at the door. Below, the gates of the inner bailey had been blown apart with what looked like a southern fire keg. Men in dark leather were pouring through the wreckage. The royal guard was rallying, but the surprise was total. The vanguard had been thinned. The rotations had been wrong. The agent inside the castle had spent months ensuring this exact morning would be the morning. The walls had the fewest defenders. Alaric's voice was iron. Reuben. Take the heavy infantry to the lower bailey. Hold the inner gates. Yes, my king. Win. She turned to him. Win. The crypts. No, win. The crypts are a dead end. If they breach the inner gates, the underground floods. Everyone there dies. I am not going. You are wounded. And I remember the old maps. He stared at her. What? In the records vault. The defensive schematics from the first human-wolf wars. 500 years ago. There is a system of oil vents built into the walls of the bottleneck corridor on the eastern approach. Hidden. The lever that opens them is in the servants' catacombs beneath the Great Hall. If Blackwood's men funnel through that corridor to reinforce the courtyard, we can burn them. Yes. He took her face in both his hands, his thumbs against her cheekbones. You cannot go alone, I know. Take Reuben. Reuben is needed at the inner gate. Take. Reuben, Alaric, I will fight better knowing he is with you. Reuben, the Gamma was already there. Already at the door. Already nodding, my king. Take her to the catacombs. Hold the lever until the corridor is full. Then turn it. Then bring her back to me alive. Do you understand me, Reuben Hale? I understand, my king. Swear. I swear it on my brother's grave. Go. Win turned. Then she turned back. She rose on the balls of her feet. She kissed him. Hard. Quick. The kind of kiss a soldier gives her husband at the door before a battle that may not end the way either of them hopes. Do not die, she said. You either. She ran. The corridor outside her chamber was already full of smoke. Win pushed through it. She did not stop at her own door. She turned and ran into the chamber next to it, the room where her grandmother had been moved 3 weeks ago. She burst in. Mabel was sitting up in bed, awake, alert. The healer beside her packing a small leather bag. Grandmother, I know. I heard the horn. You have to go to the crypts. The healer will take you. There are guards posted, Win. Grandmother, please. There is no time. Come here, come here. Win crossed the room. She knelt by the bed, Mabel's hand on her cheek. Thin. Cold. The dearest thing in the world. You are going somewhere dangerous. Yes, you will come back. I will try. You will come back, Win Hartley, because I have not lived 70 years to lose you in the 71st. Do you hear me? Yes, grandmother. Kindness needs no permission, and neither does courage. Mabel kissed her forehead, then pushed her gently away. Go save the king, my girl. Win stood. She ran. The catacombs were pitch dark. Reuben led with a single torch, 4 guards behind them. The walls were old stone. The floor was dirt. The air smelled of dust and old bones, and somewhere far above, smoke. Above them, the battle was raging. They could hear it, faint, filtered through 40 feet of stone. The clash of steel, the roar of wolves, the screams. Wine kept her good hand on the wall to steady herself. The wound in her shoulder was burning. The sling pulled at her neck. She did not slow. Here, she stopped in front of a rusted iron wheel embedded in the wall. The wheel was the size of a cartwheel. A heavy lever protruded from its center. She pressed her ear to the stone above. She heard them. Boots, many boots, marching in a tight column above. Reinforcements moving through the bottleneck corridor to flood the courtyard from the eastern approach. They are in the corridor. How many? I cannot tell. Hundreds. Wait until the column is fully inside. She waited. She counted. 20 heartbeats, 40, 60. The marching above grew thicker. She nodded to Reuben. He gripped the wheel. She gripped it with her good hand. The 2 guards moved in beside them, 4 sets of hands. 4 backs braced. 1 twisted breath. Now, they turned the wheel. It groaned. It screamed. The rust fought them. It moved an inch. 2. Then the old mechanism gave way and the wheel spun in a single smooth motion. Above them, a hiss. Then silence. Then a roar. The hidden grates into the bottleneck corridor had opened. 500 years of waiting. Thousands of gallons of thick southern pitch poured down from concealed reservoirs onto the heads of the men marching through. They were soaked before they understood what was happening. A heartbeat later, from the battlements above, the royal archers loosed. Flaming arrows. The inferno that followed lit the morning sky. Win did not see it, but she heard it, even 40 feet below the earth. She heard the corridor become a furnace. She heard the screams cut short. She heard Blackwood's reinforcements turn to ash, in the place where they had thought they were victorious. She sat down, hard, on the dirt floor. Reuben was beside her. You did it. We did. My king. We need to. He is fighting Blackwood. He needs to know the reinforcements are dead. Tell him. Reuben closed his eyes. The pack link, the silver thread. She watched him. He opened his eyes. He knows. The courtyard was a ruin. Stone burned. Men bled. Wolves and human soldiers locked in a final grinding melee that no longer had any shape. At the center, Alaric. Lord Garrick Blackwood, the Southern Alpha, was a brute of a man, 50 years old, broad as an ox, a face cut by an old scar from temple to jaw. In his hand, a massive silver gretax, the blade as long as a child was tall. The Southern wolves had been forging their hatred for a generation. He had carried this axe for half of it. They circled each other. 2 alphas, the crown of the north between them. Blackwood swung. Alaric ducked. The axe took a chunk out of the courtyard fountain behind him. Stone exploded. Alaric struck. His blade scored Blackwood's ribs. The Southerner did not slow. Again, the axe came down. Alaric blocked with his crossguard. The force of it drove him to one knee. He felt his sword arm shake. He pushed up, slammed his shoulder into Blackwood's chest. The Southerner stumbled. Alaric struck. The blade opened a long cut across Blackwood's bicep. Not enough. Not enough. Blackwood was the larger wolf, the stronger swing. Each parry was costing Alaric strength. Each block was buying him only seconds. Then, the roar from the eastern wall, the column of fire that rose into the sky. Blackwood's head turned. He had heard, even through the battle, the screams of his reinforcements as they were unmade by pitch and flame. It was a fraction of a second. It was enough. Alaric did not take the opening, because in the same fraction of that second, a smaller figure burst through the smoke of the courtyard. Win. Her arm out of the sling, her dark hair loose, a clay jug of pitch from the catacombs in her good hand. She did not look at Alaric. She did not stop. She ran straight at Blackwood's back. She swung the jug with the strength of every prayer her grandmother had ever taught her. The clay shattered against the back of Blackwood's leather armor. Pitch poured down the Southerner's back, his shoulders, his hair. Alaric did not need to be told. He had already seen the torch that had fallen from a dying guard 10 feet away. He moved, faster than he had ever moved. He scooped the torch from the ground. He pressed the torch to the pitch. The flame caught instantly. The Southern Alpha staggered back, engulfed. The roar was not human. It was not wolf either. It was something older and more terrible than both. Alaric did not stand back. He stepped forward. He drove his blade home. The Southern Alpha's eyes went wide. Then empty, Blackwood collapsed. The fire ate what was left. A great silence rolled out across the courtyard. The Southern soldiers, nearest the body, saw their Alpha fall. They saw the flame. They saw the King of the North, standing above their leader's burning corpse. Soot on his face, blood on his sword, his eyes the color of molten gold. They threw down their weapons. It rippled outward, a wave, across the entire courtyard, across the inner bailey, across the wreckage of the gates. The siege of Ravencrest Keep was over. He turned. He found her. She was standing in the smoke, her arm hanging at her side, her shoulder bleeding through the bandage, her face streaked with soot, her eyes too wide. He crossed the distance in 5 steps. He fell to his knees in front of her, his full armored weight. There in the burning courtyard, in front of 300 surviving wolves and 100 captured Southern soldiers and every lord who had ever doubted that a human girl could matter. He wrapped his arms around her waist. He pressed his face into her stomach. He held on. She raised her good hand. She rested it on his hair. She did not speak. She did not need to. In the corner of the courtyard, half buried beneath the body of a Southern soldier he had taken down with his own dying blade, a man stirred. Tristan Croft. He had escaped his cell in the chaos. Reuben would later find the cell's silver chains loose on the floor of the dungeon with no clear explanation. Tristan had come above. Tristan had seen the Southern column moving into the courtyard from the eastern approach. Tristan, in the strange last act of a man who had lost everything, had thrown himself at the soldiers who would have flanked Alaric from behind. He had killed 3 of them. He had taken a sword through the thigh and another across the chest doing it. He was dying. He knew it. Wynne saw him first. She did not say anything to Alaric. She simply turned in his arms. She guided him with her hand. She pointed. Alaric looked. He rose. He went to his beta. He knelt in the rubble. He pulled the soldier's body off Tristan. He looked at the wounds. They were beyond any healer. Tristan looked up at him. His face was white with blood loss. Brother, you came back. I never. Fully left. Why? Because, Tristan coughed. Wet. Because someone told me my mother had been killed 20 years ago by a man whose blood you carry. And I believed him, without ever checking. And I gave my whole life to the wrong story. And I almost gave you Tristan. Your uncle. Alaric froze. My uncle is dead. Alaric froze. In exile. No. He is the agent. Garrick Blackwood was only the sword. Aldrich Ravencrest was the hand. Your father's brother. He has wanted the crown for 15 years, he told me. About my mother. He told me. About the human you would love, Tristan. I am sorry. I am sorry, brother. I am so. His head fell back. His chest stopped moving. Alaric closed his eyes. He held his beta's body for a long moment. He did not weep, but his shoulders shook. Wynne knelt beside him. She put her hand on his back. She let him grieve in the only way a king is allowed to grieve, in silence, briefly, with the wind moving the smoke around them like a slow gray sea. Then, in Tristan's coat pocket, a folded letter. Wynne saw the corner of it. She drew it out gently. She handed it to Alaric. He opened it with one hand. He read it. It was Tristan's handwriting. The date was 4 months ago. Brother, I am writing this in case I do not find the courage to speak it aloud. I have been deceived for most of my life. There is a story I was told about my mother that I have just begun to believe was a lie. If it is a lie, I have done terrible things in its name. If it is not a lie, I have done things I cannot undo. I am writing to ask you for time. Time to be sure. I do not know yet what side of this I will stand on when the day comes. But know this. Whatever I have done, whatever I do, I have loved you as a brother every day of my life. I will not be able to undo what is already in motion. I can only hope that at the end I am able to choose correctly. Even if I cannot save myself, it was unsigned. Unsent, Alaric folded it once, twice. He pressed it inside his tunic, against his heart. He rose. He lifted his beta's body in his own arms. He carried him out of the courtyard himself. The way he had once promised, decades ago, that one would carry the other off any field where they might fall. The pack watched him pass. Wynn walked behind him. No one spoke. The wind moved the leaves, and the ash and the world turned slow and gray. And somewhere in the north, in a hidden estate that had been abandoned to a dead man for 15 years, an old wolf in fine clothes received a raven and read its message and understood that he had failed and that he had been seen. But that is another story. For now, the keep was safe. For now, the war was over. For now. A month passed. The great hall was rebuilt. The stones were repaired. The tapestries were rehung. The shattered windows were fitted with new glass, plain this time, not stained. Alaric had asked for plain. He said the hall had seen enough color from blood. The pack gathered. Every lord and lady of the north, Zetzer houses, the greater. The servants in their best wool, given a place at the lower tables. The human staff of the kitchens. Old Bram, freshly bathed, his thin white hair combed, sitting at a table for the first time in his life. Sister Bridget had been brought from the chapel of Wynn's childhood village. She sat at the head of the human servants' table. She wore a fresh habit. She wept openly into a handkerchief and did not seem to care who saw. Grandmother Mabel sat at the high table, in a chair beside the king's. She wore a gown of soft gray wool with silver buttons. The healer had said 3 weeks ago that Mabel would walk again, slowly, in time. Today she had walked to her chair on her own feet, with Wynn's arm under hers. The pack had risen as she entered, 300 wolves. Standing for a human grandmother, she had told Wynn afterward that she did not know whether to laugh or cry, and so she had done both. Now she watched. Eyes bright, hands folded in her lap. Wynn stood at the front of the hall. She wore a gown of deep crimson, the color of autumn leaves, the color of the blood she had not lost. Her dark hair was loose down her back, pinned only at the crown with a single silver clasp. Her shoulders still bore the bandage beneath the gown. She had refused to remove it for the ceremony. She had said, "Let the scar be part of the crown." Alaric stood beside her. In his hands, a small circlet, forged not of heavy gold but of intertwined silver vines, set with a single ruby at the center, the color of the gown, the color of the leaves, the color of the heart she had given him, without ever asking him for his in exchange. The hall was silent. He spoke. "Tradition says an alpha must take a wolf to be his Luna." A murmur, tradition, has nearly burned this house to the ground. Twice, the murmur stilled. Tradition gave me a beta who turned, a master of coin who sold our grain, a lady of high blood who tried to murder my archivist in the heart of my own gardens. Tradition has not served this house. The blood of wolves has not served this house. Power and lineage and pure ancestry have not served this house. He paused. This has served this house. He turned to Wynn, a maid, a human girl, 24 years old, who slipped a note into my hand at a feast when she did not know if she would live to see the morning. Who read ledgers she had only just learned how to read. Who ran into a burning courtyard with a jug of pitch and saved a king who outweighed her 3 times over. Who chose, again and again, to do the kind and dangerous thing, because her grandmother taught her that kindness needs no permission. He raised the silver circlet. I declare, before this pack and before every house of the north, that Wynn Hartley is my chosen Luna, that she will rule beside me, that her word in this house will carry the weight of my own, that any harm done to her will be answered by me with the full force of this crown. Bow to your queen. He set the circlet on her head. The ruby caught the firelight. 300 wolves. They knelt, lords, ladies, soldiers, healers, the kitchen staff, the footman, old Bram, lowering himself slowly with the help of the chair beside him. Sister Bridget, sobbing into her handkerchief, the gamma, The captains. The maids who had once curtsied stiffly with envy in their eyes and now curtsied freely with tears. In the center of it all, Grandmother Mabel, who could not kneel, who instead pressed her hand to her heart, who whispered, just loud enough for Wynne to hear across the silent hall, "Kindness needs no permission, my girl, and neither does a queen." Wynne's eyes filled. She did not let the tears fall. She turned to Alaric. She took his hand. She lifted his hand. She turned it. She kissed the inside of his wrist, the same wrist where, weeks ago, she had pressed a folded scrap of paper that had said, "Your beta sold you out." He looked at her. He smiled. It was a small smile. Not the smiles of a king, the smile of a man who had buried his heart 3 years ago and had finally, against all his own efforts, dug it up. "Crimson Queen of the North," he said, softly. "Just for her, steady king," she answered. "Just for him." The hall rose. The cheer that followed shook the new glass in the windows. That evening, when the feast had ended and the lords had gone to their chambers and the servants had banked the great fires, and the corridors of the castle were quiet at last, Alaric and Wynne stood together on the balcony of the king's wing. The first snow of the season was falling. Light, slow, the kind of snow that drifts more than falls. The keep below was dusted in white. Wynne stood with her shoulder against his arm. His hand was around her waist. She turned her face into his coat. "Alaric." "Yes. Do you think Tristan is forgiven?" A long pause. "He does not need to be forgiven, Wynne." "No? He needs to be remembered." She nodded against his shoulder. The snow caught in her hair, in her lashes, in the silver vines of the crown she had not yet taken off. "My grandmother used to say something else. Tell me," she said. "The world is mostly cold, so when you find a warm place, do not be afraid to stay." He did not answer. He only pulled her closer. He bent his head. He pressed his mouth to her hair. The snow kept falling. In a dungeon below, an empty cell. Its silver chains coiled on the floor. The man who had worn them was buried that morning in the crypt of the Ravencrest dead. Beside the king's wife, beside the king's father, beside the small unmarked stone where the king's son had not yet been born. In another cell deeper still, Lady Imogen Marsh sat against a damp wall and would not eat. In the Master of Coin's chambers, the seal of the Rose and Thorns had been broken in half and locked in an iron box. In her chamber down the hall, Grandmother Mabel slept with a small carved comb in her hand. The comb had belonged to Wynne's mother. Mabel had kept it for 20 years. She would give it back to Wynne in the morning. In a hidden estate far to the north, a candle burned in an upstairs window. A man waited. He was patient. He had been patient for 15 years. He could wait longer. But that, as they say, is another story. For tonight, on a balcony in Ravencrest Keep, 2 people stood together in the falling snow. For tonight, a kingdom slept under a queen who had once been invisible. For tonight, the warmest place in the cold world was the place between 2 folded hands. And that, for now, was enough.